what's happening this morning is purely a good, I think, reality check for us, because we're moving seamlessly from one venue to another, from one topic to another. And I think with this panel discussions, we had the idea to make some time for engagement and interaction. So we've got, as you can see there, actually 2 universities participating in this panel discussion. And if I may, I don't want to rock the boat, but if I may, can I ask that, Gerhard, I'm going to ask you, and then any of the other colleagues from Walter Sisulu to introduce your thoughts on the topic, and the topic focusing on new technologies implementation at scale and what lessons we can share with each other. And if there's any other member in the audience who also want to share thoughts, we will proceed to that, and then we can engage with asking questions and asking the panel members to answer them. Gerhard, without further ado, if you can just provide us with a short introduction to the theme, and then maybe I'm going to hand over to the Walter Sisulu colleagues. Colleagues, I have no preference who take the first opportunity to speak. And if you want to speak separately, it's also okay. Looking forward to the session. We've got an hour to discuss a very applicable topic. Gerhard, I haven't checked if you're in the room. Okay, so I'm checking if Gerhard is in the room. If any other Northwest University wants to start the discussion, you're welcome to. Else, I'm going to ask the Walter Sisulu colleagues to start the discussion.
I'm from Northwest University. My name is
Liana. Oh, sorry, I thought it's Liana. Please go ahead.
No, and when I see new technologies implemented at scale, my mind immediately goes to the quadrant that Johannes presented to us in a previous session, because I always think that when we always say that technology should not drive pedagogy, and then, you know, we kind of forget about it along the line. And I think that those quadrants is such a nice way to frame our thinking, because it's based on learning theories. And when I think of learning spaces, when I think of the learning environment online, I think of the learning environment in a physical space. I want to begin by asking, what is it that's going to happen in this space? What is our underlying goal? Do we want to construct something? And that then, to me, informs the technologies that we need to implement. Any thoughts?
Thank you for that. It's a pity we could not share the quadrant I think you reference, or the model you reference. Yes, I have many.
Share it.
Okay, thank you. I've got many thoughts, but I don't want to jump here and make the first comment. Let me hand over to any of the Walter Sisulu colleagues. You can also start introducing the topic from your side, please.
Thank you, Dolf. Yes, my name is Bulelwa. Yeah, I thought that there would be some brief on the topic first before we can speak to it, but I'll just speak from the heart. When we talk about technologies being used at scale, I think what immediately comes into mind is what informs the choice of a technology. How do we get to choose which technology is suitable for a particular purpose? And how do we then measure the impact of that technology? I am saying this because we as at Walter Sisulu are beginning to realize the importance of pedagogy. We are having a lot of debates around if we are recommending technologies. Some of the technologies are actually recommended by lecturers as well. But how do we then know that we are not technocentric and just using technologies because there are technologies, or just using technologies without being aware how students will benefit from that technology, how that technology will enhance learning, or kind of make sure that students are able to grasp a concept and so on. So how do we measure impact? I will pause there because that's the question I'm really battling with. How do we, because the challenge we are having is that when you go to the lecturers as an educational technologist or an instructional designer and you are assisting them, all they expect you is to do the click. We had a situation where a department actually said to us, please don't tell us about your Bloom's and your constructivist theories. All we want to do is to show us how to use this technology. And you begin to ask yourself, how will they make a decision as to which technology to use for what, if they do not have that background in terms of pedagogy, the theoretical knowledge that is supposed to ground them into understanding how learning happens and how should then instruction occur. Thank you very much, Dolf.
Thank you, colleagues. And yes, you're correct. I thought I was first going to give the panel members an opportunity just to share their perspectives. And then I will want to quickly talk about, I think, which is quite related to the topic, which relies on the topic of digital transformation. I think that is actually what we're currently speaking about. It is not per se the technologies or the individual technologies, but it is actually about digital transformation. Now, I've prepared a few slides just as an introduction, but let me allow any of your other colleagues from Walter Sisulu, because you indicated you want to be on the panel members, to add to the topic, and if not, then I can quickly share the slides and then we can open the floor for the rest of the discussion. I've already noted a few interesting comments here. So anyone else who wants to join from Walter Sisulu from the panel members?
Okay, my name is Tshepo. I will also add to what my manager said. For me, technologies at scale, when they are being introduced, the big question is, from what will it take for the users to use it? I'm saying this in terms of what knowledge, what base knowledge do they need to be able to use that technology? Is it incremental on the knowledge that they already know, or is just a totally new thing that is just coming from out there? And also it goes also to solving an actual problem that they have. Is it also solving the actual problem that they have? There are so many solutions of technology which are out there that can solve a lot of problems, and if you just rush because we see one thing that it can solve for us, but not general things. So we need to, before integrating technology also, we need to be questioning with it. Can it answer all, if not most, of the problems that we are having for that particular context? Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, and I think that you literally introduced my topic, which I quickly want to share in 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and then I'm going to open up the floor. So if you allow me, colleagues, just maybe to share quick thoughts with you as part of the introduction of this whole topic. I think we've been hearing a few questions about the why. Why are we implementing new technologies? And without trying to share personal thoughts and so forth, let's look at what the literature is telling us, and specifically the popular literature is telling us, who spend a lot of effort and time and focus in this. And I'm referencing here quickly an EduCourse article, and you can see there, I'm not going to tell or read or repeat what's been on the screen there. If your digital transformation must have at least an outcome, it must be able to achieve something. And in a commercial world, of course, that is, of course, get better customer experience. In a higher education world, that is to get a better student experience. And these days, if you do not have the means of measure the success of your implementation of your technology, you have to ask questions about why are we implementing new technology? Is it for the sake of trends? Is it for the sake of bandwagon, or whatever the reason may be? And then I think the other thing which we need to also mention here, that digital transformation implies improving, enhancing, and sometimes it is replacing existing, but it's not always the case. So that's the first thought I want to share with you as introduction to the topic. The second thought is the 4 areas which your implementation of any new technology or new technology strategy must address. And that is, of course, process transformation. That's also just being mentioned. What is the teaching and learning outcomes we want to achieve? It is business model transformation, and in our case, our teaching and learning to achieve what? And I think in our South African context, no one can argue about the single outcome must be student success, enhancing access, improving throughput, increasing the student experience, and so forth. And then I think the other thing is, in that process, there needs to be transformation. We've heard that right through this morning, a lot of presentations on what were required in remote teaching, what must have happened. And then I think the important thing, success will only be possible if there's a cultural organizational transformation. And maybe as a last or second last slide, the 5 principles underpinning this. And I think also this is being mentioned, and I'm not going to go in specific order, but you have to engage with the audience to ensure effective cultural and organizational transformation. You have to have a new vision. It must address something which you aim or strive for. And in these days, if it's not a secure environment, and here is, for me personally, the biggest, most important one. I've noticed in a few presentations, there's been mention of let's just start using this and this and this software. The question is, where do we getting data of that software from? The data, what will it align to regulations like FERPA or EU GDPR or POPIA? And can I use the data to make informed decisions about the impact of this technology? And by the way, what is today the name on the horizon is not to say it's going to be the name on the horizon tomorrow, meaning technology change so easy. And we know higher education struggles to be able to be agile. And then maybe there's just a process of how do you go through, and I think that's being referenced. So that is for me a short introduction, colleagues, to this whole topic of technology implementation and implementing new technologies. And with that, I think let me hand over to the floor for making comments or ask questions and provide input from their university perspective. And I'm inviting you to have this as an open discussion.
Dolf, if I can just quickly share that slide that I promised. It is exactly the same one that Joanna shared. I just want to tell you what my thinking is around it, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so when we speak about technology, Reeves and Jan Herington said when you evaluate online learning, you have to really ensure that there's alignment between these 8 critical factors, and technology roles is indicated of one of the important ones. And on the one hand, where it's constructivist, it talks about active engagement, and then on the other side, it's passive orientation, and that's the objectivist side. And when we look at the Cronje model that they explained very well to us, I'm so happy then I don't have to go into so much detail. But you really get a sense of the constructivist quadrant there at the top, and then the objectivist one at the bottom. And I really have a sense that in COVID times, we've really shifted our attention to technology. I've been to many presentations and discussions where people talk about what is the future of education, and then immediately the discussion goes towards technologies. And then I just want to throw up my hands in the air and ask myself, how many years will we still stand for this? It's like Diana Laurielot said, we will only know that we've grown up with technology once we stop debating technologies. It should be like paper. We don't debate the role of paper in higher ed. And yeah, that is just my 3 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me open the floor for questions to anyone or make a comment. You can add numerous questions about any model being presented here, but please let me hear and share experience. I think the aim of this discussion is to share lessons learned. I think one of the lessons which we've just heard here was that if the focus is purely on the technology and not on the educational or the pedagogy, then you approach it the wrong way. Of course, counter arguments to that is technology stimulate or provide specific opportunities to apply specific pedagogies. Okay, colleagues, any question? Anyone want to take the microphone and share their own contribution about a recent experience during the specific COVID pandemic? I'm sure there can be a contribution. Yeah, anyone? Johannes,
Dolf,
you want to start devil's advocate again?
If I can just talk to one of the chats over here, somebody was asking, is there a relationship between the use of technology and throughput or success rates? And the answer is no, because of Tom Russell's no significant difference phenomenon. I think it's something that we have to point out to people here, that it's been shown since about 1927 that if you use two different media to put information across, it makes no difference to the quality of learning that happens. And you'll remember, Tom, at least, Clark uses the analogy of the grocery truck. So whether you deliver your groceries with a cart and horses, or whether you deliver it with a lorry, the quality of the groceries does not change. So the technology that delivers the learning is not that important. It's the methodology with which you deliver it. And so the other side of that coin is you cannot drive a grocery truck to the moon. So your technology needs to be appropriate to the methodology that you're trying to do and to the type of information. That's why we've had these models all the time. But it's been the tacit experience of a whole lot of people during the pandemic that the student performance has been the same. There wasn't a bigger dropout rate, and there wasn't a bigger drop in academic performance. But what we're forgetting is that that was hugely at the expense of academic staff who had to radically change the way they do it and had to literally mop up students that were getting lost. And so it's not the technology, it was the effort of the people behind that technology.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Again, a few counter arguments, but just on your last comment about the implication, the dropout and success throughput rate, that remains open for debate until we return to invigilated exams on campus. That comment can be revisited by that time again, I think, to be honest with you.
No, I agree with you, but that's if we're going to compare, to do that sort of comparison again. If we're going to say that we want to compare a completely different way of teaching to sit-down exams, then again, we can't control for all the variables.
Yes, I agree with you there, but I also think what we've learned from also the research and the literature is that the whole topic of the added value, which was often not possible in other means of teaching and learning, which technology brings. But I think we agree on, as a panel, on the topic that we know how and what decisions we must make in implementing the technology.
Yeah.
For the focus of this panel may also shift towards maybe what lessons have we learned throughout the years in implementing technologies at scale, because that is one of the lessons which we've talked now for the last few minutes about, is how do we make decisions about technology and what we want to achieve with technology. And that was the focus of my introductions also. But I want to shift the focus maybe to the lessons we learned. And again, the literature tells us what we must focus on, and there's models of how implementing them. But I was curious to understand what lessons we have learned, and even how we burned our fingers in implementing technologies at scale in universities. And that may be relating also maybe to staff development, it may be relating to cost and all those other variables. Any comment there, colleagues? Any sharing experience? Detkan, I think you, yes, or Estelle or Detkan, yes. Yeah, please go.
Let's make a small contribution on this one.
Oh.
Yeah, yes, I think what we need to focus on, I agree fully with the latter speaker, because what we have learned during this period was that even though we are lecturers in a higher education, there is evidence that we are not ready to, not necessarily ready, or we are not prepared to teach, especially during these times of disruptions. I am saying this because literature reveals that lecturers in higher education do not automatically qualify to be good teachers by virtue of having PhDs and being teachers in higher education. But there is some mastery that may be required for them to be able to understand pedagogies and methodologies of teaching in higher education. What has emerged during this period of COVID-19 is that because lecturers were forced to move to an online environment, what they did, they simply transferred their knowledge of teaching face-to-face to an online space, which for me was a great challenge, because you will find that if people are not prepared to design material for distance education, they were used to meeting students and they were used to design material in order to have face-to-face interactions. And now they have to think about models like flipped classroom and other instructional design models that are emerging. I think that's where the focus should be, rather than on the what technology, but instead on how do we use the available technologies to achieve the intended outcomes. That would be my little piece of contribution. Thank you.
Could I add to that, or maybe even summarize? I see Liana's hands up, by the way. If I could summarize or sort of what was very evident here is the amount of bad classroom teaching that was just shifted online. So they were already bad lecturers face-to-face. Now they were just bad online lecturers. Gerhard Wissing kept on saying that. Don't use technology to take your bad online.
Johannes, I agree with you. And I just want to make a comment here also, Liana, and then hand over to you. And then maybe if Detkan, Margriet, or Estelle can come in and share their comments. But I think if just to add to that, my sentence on that is bad teaching. Technology will not solve the challenge in the ecosystem. And replacing technologies will not solve the challenges in the ecosystem. And the same comment, if you add technology on top of bad practices in either in and outside of the classroom, you cannot expect the results. Leona, over to you.
Yes, I mean, it's very, they say if you take your bad teaching online, you just make it more visible for more people to see. It's not going to fix it. I just also wanted to add to in your presentation that you said you can't track the data. The thing is also, it doesn't integrate many of those technologies with your bigger systems. So it makes it so much more difficult to track marks, and not everybody is, for example, doing WhatsApp. And at the end, the small little group of people that has to support this is so overwhelmed with all these technologies that everybody's just starting to use and not looking at the bigger implication of the technologies.
Okay, so in essence, you highlighted the value of integration technologies in an institution at scale is critical, because it's often more important to have an integrated, secure environment than be able to jump on all the different small latest and greatest. I think Margriet also make a comment there about bad lectures who also called out by our students. And I just want to take that comment further, Margriet. Will you agree to me that students have new expectations, and if and when they walk again through the gates of the campus into your classroom, there's going to be new challenges and new expectations. We also had a small experience of that, where students returning to a lecture brought their computers, and they're more engaged online and in class using their computers now suddenly. And I'm not sure if everyone to make comments about that, but thank you, Leona. I agree with you.
I just want to follow up with that. I think the COVID, this whole thing at the end brought us where we always wanted to be, and that is computer integrated education. But it took COVID for us to get there.
I agree with you. In some instances, COVID enhanced the speed of adoption and the level of maturity. And I think for us, we struggle at the University of Pretoria to literally to keep up with the demands from lectures for innovation, and specifically our mature users. And that will remain a challenge in the future. You mentioned there, Leona, the small groups who need to support institutions. And suddenly, the university realized what the role of centers for teaching and learning will be in the future. Any other comments, any other questions? We're still focusing, colleagues, as a reminder, on scaling institutional technologies. Maybe I can put a question on the table for discussion. How do we deal with, as someone mentioned in the previous presentation, all those magic wands dropping out of the air, solutions to everything? Everyone wants to sell you the best and the latest and the greatest. How do you deal with those types of requests? And then, of course, the demands from lectures for using some of these technologies.
Dolf, there's a couple of hands up that have been up for a while. There's 3 hands.
Oh, okay, please.
There's Koshla, Margriet, and Johannes.
Okay, go for it. I'm struggling to see the hand thingy, but I may find my way around.
No problem. I can assist you to identify the hand.
Thank you. Okay, who are we giving first preference? Who was first?
I have no idea, but on my screen, Koshla's first. So
okay, go for it.
Good morning. I just want to make a comment not related to your last statement, but what became evident is for us is we always speak about access of the technology for the student. And we came across that the access for technology for the lecturer is very unequal. And if we want to solve some of these problems, I think we must start there by then institutionalizing a set of tools or technologies, and then advocating for these are the best things to do with this. That was the one comment on the access to technology. And then the other comment, I've been dabbling a bit in strategy and digital transformation and the reasons as to why. And I find that one of I think for most of the universities or institutions, the biggest roadblock is probably going to be that the access to the technologies, the access to the data, it's not democratized. So there's the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper will be the roadblock. So that's just me for a bit of comment there.
Thank you for that comment. I can reply, but let's give the other people also an opportunity. Who's got their hand also up?
Johannes?
Yeah, mine is the only one that's up now still. I wanted to respond, Dolf, to your question about this proliferation of technologies and go back to a prediction that I made more than 10 years ago about the future of learner management systems, saying that what's going to happen is that they are going to get smaller rather than bigger. Because the problem is that and I saw that from the old authoring systems. Remember, you had little authoring systems and then they became enormous and then they went away. Because as they add more features, they start encroaching on software that already has those features. So if you look at the moment at any of the sort of thing that Blackboard allows you to do, but the problem with Blackboard is getting so big in trying to allow that. You could use ConnectYard and then have WhatsApp linked to it. You could have Telegram linked to your Blackboard. And so what we are looking for is mashup tools. So that you can say to somebody, but you can just WhatsApp your exam, at least WhatsApp your essay straight into the exam portal. You don't have to still access Blackboard, etc. So it's what is really going to be necessary is a very tiny program that allows people to use that which is most comfortable for them, and then integrates all that, because that also talks to what Liana was saying, is how do you scale that? You've got everybody with little WhatsApp groups. That is a nightmare as far as protection of personal information is concerned, because every student's cell number is on that WhatsApp group. So that's not a very good thing to do. But if you have, there are systems, if you had systems whereby the group is actually done inside Blackboard, and then students just get the outside of the thing, etc. So then also with examination systems, there's responders, etc., etc. If you look at all the plagiarism detection software that there are all these different ones. What is going to be needed is a massive but tiny looking integrator of all those.
Yeah, so maybe what you're referencing is what's already happening in the majority of the ecosystem. So any well-known learning management system, if we can call it that, still have the ability to integrate and adhere to standards. So the LMS becomes an ecosystem where you adhere to standard, and you bring in your Turnitins of the world, you bring in your ConnectYards of the world. For the user, it's a single environment. Although there's different cloud sources. So these things become so ubiquitous, and the name of the game that if you're not adhering to those things, and whatever you implement at institution level, because this is the focus of this panel, and you not have the ability to be able to integrate standards like LTI or all those standards, then you're going to be getting lost. For your student and for your lecture, they don't care where it resides. They want that centralized, integrated environment. And for you as an institution, you want to be able to have a secure environment and be able to have the data being transferred from one environment to another environment. Is there any other hands still raised, colleagues? Do we have still hands? I think I'm looking here through the comments also. Heinrich, yeah, you're making the comment about the categories and why assessment technologies are so important. And I think that can, if you want to grab the mic, or Johan or Granny, any one of you, please feel free to add to your comments. I see we've got a very good example here of what lectures will have to cope in the new normal, because this is what students expecting. They want to participate in this discussion through synchronous and asynchronous means, and meaning they want to be in the live session, but they also want to contribute in the text. And that's going to make it challenging for everybody else, which implies that the lecturer will have to fulfill separate roles if he or she is alone in a meeting. Okay, anyone wants to grab the mic?
Dolf, can I?
Yes.
Okay, there's somebody. Granny wants to talk, so I'll be quiet.
Yeah, and then I want to put another question on the table.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dolf and Prof. Johan, for the opportunity. My comment basically is on, I think B was saying about her concern why lecturers are a bit skeptical of being helped and being not ready to use the technology that we have now. I think for me, we probably did not utilize the time before COVID that we should have prepared for any eventualities that come our way as universities, that by now we are forced to come to a point of using technology where now we find our lecturers finding it difficult. Like some people have mentioned that our lecturers, some of them are not really, they are specialists in from their field, but not from mastering pedagogy and the models of teaching. So I guess we should have done this differently. What I'm trying to say is, for now, what we should just have to do is just to help our lecturers to start to acknowledge that things need to be done differently, irrespective of where we find ourselves, but things need to be differently for learning and teaching. And we also have to emphasize, ensure that our students realize that we move from the phase of being taught by face to face, and there are many ways of learning and exploring their teaching, that learning, and also understand that things have changed differently. And there's nothing we can do. We just have to move with the change and make it to happen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Quickly, just to add to that comment also, I think we also need to consider the student voice in these things, although it's often difficult to balance student voice and demands and institutional capacity and means. And then I also note the thread in the discussion, if anyone wants to jump in on that specific topic, it's about the business models behind institutionalizing technology. Often the so-called well-familiar model of initial limited free usage, and then suddenly when there's a growing demand, that changes to a commercial model. And that impact also on the adoption of technologies. I've heard one or two comments about support, the capacity of institutions to support these innovations and these demands. Anyone want to follow up on those comments? Okay, so a little bit of silence. I'm not sure if there's any hand.
There are two hands up, Dolf. There's Johannes and Margriet.
Okay, Margriet, you again, and then Johannes, because I don't want to not allow anyone to participate. Margriet, go for it.
Bye, Duncan. I hope you can hear me, because
Yes.
I've got load shedding, so the signal is a bit difficult. With regards to the support, and I think training in my mind goes along with that, and helping lecturers adopt whatever tools we recommend or whatever tools the student cohort recommends or prefers. One of the interesting things, and this was also a comment made, that we often work with the idea, or I think perhaps our past experiences have given us the impression that lecturers or academic staff are not open to try new things or new tools, new models. And what we've seen here, and I think a lot of us have said, is that people are open to, especially having had this little push and knowing that suddenly they realize what the different centers at their institutions are really for, and what it is that we bring to the table, how we can help, also how much students, how much knowledge their own students have, and can help and support them in using the tools optimally. And I think that when I made that for myself, it's actually just a comment to myself as well, reminding myself that having enough support obviously is always extremely important. Having a clear vision with regards to the tools that we are using as an institution, making sure that we communicate that clearly, the what, why, how, and when, as I think it was Johan who said, freemium becomes premium. But just, you know, also for us realizing that we are should no longer necessarily think of the lecturers or the academic staff as unwilling or unable. Of course, there are always those, but a little bit of support can actually go quite a long way once people are, you know, realize what the voordeel, what is that in English? I can't get it with my October brain. Advantage, thank you. It's October. So thanks, Melissa. So that was just an interesting observation for me. And as we were speaking about support and looking at the comments, just also realizing how lecturers are open to provide support also amongst each other if they know that we've got their back, so to speak.
Yeah.
Johannes, your hand still up?
Yes, Dolf, mine links very closely to that. Because while I understand the whole thing and the need for a university to standardize on a product, I'd like us to shift the metaphor a little bit like motor cars. You know, one of the criticism against motor cars is they all look exactly the same, and that's because we have such an interesting balance between standardization and diversity. And if we look at what's happening at the moment with our communication software, where Zoom and Microsoft Teams are the sort of top two along the line, but then there's also Google, and there used to be Skype, which sometimes still pops up once in a million years. And then a lot of people just like doing a quick WhatsApp video. And so there are these multiple platforms. So partly one could try and standardize. I remember many years ago, my dad was a director at the Bureau of Standards. And to make his life easier, he just wanted to buy Toyotas. And he was told you can't do that, because if the Bureau of Standards is seen to standardize on one brand only, that's unfair to that brand. And so sometimes you get that you need to find some balance between allowing people the freedom of exploring whatever it is that they want, but then keeping the rigidity. And so to go back to the motor car analogy, you can drive whatever car you like, as long as you keep on driving on the left side of the road. And so there will have to be almost an academic driver's license, if you like, about what things we can do, what things we definitely can't do, and what things you can do with what. So there are lanes for fast traffic, there are lanes for heavy vehicles, etc. And we'll have to come up with some heuristic, some rules of thumb by which we let our people know what the limits are in their exploration, and when they go beyond our support.
Yeah. So maybe just to add to that, I think everybody understand the way and how big universities and even small universities function. And I think these days there's always the debate about cost and capacity to support, and then alignment with the regulations and so forth and so forth. So yeah, it's easier said than done in higher education, although the topic of centralizing and decentralizing has been on the table for many, many moons. And I think that is also contextual answers there, why there's decisions, or, well, how decisions are made about what we standardize on. Imagine you have 5 student information systems. Imagine you have 3 other high security systems on campus. Teaching and learning may be separately. Colleagues, any more comments? Detkan, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Dolf. This has been quite interesting. I think that we should find a balance between the centralization and decentralization issue. I think if we can have a car and then you can have accessories that you put onto the car, that will allow you some freedom to do what you want to do with other things that are not necessarily integrated, but with the understanding that if you use the car that the university provides, you will get support with it and you get your regular tune-ups, etc. And you have people who will help you with it. But when you go for those extra accessories with the whatever you put onto it, there you will not have much support going with it. That is a workable solution with regards to the support needs and the support the availability of people who can support. But what I think one should do with it is to have some kind of a disclaimer in which you indicate to people, you are welcome to use whatever you want out there, but take note that these freemium things may turn into premium things, or it can just disappear and then you lose whatever you've done there. So that they just know that there are these risks into going into certain places where they want to do. So that you just, yes, Estelle, that you do the risk management with prior to what they want to do. And yeah, it's the standardization stunts innovation. I've read a few quotes on innovation the other day, and what was very interesting to me is in our one room we have a little thing on the wall that says, don't think inside the box, think like there is no box. But then I read a quote where the person indicated that true innovation only happens if you have to stay within the box. So, and that's something that we have seen very clearly with our lecturers. They were boxed into what we have at the moment, and they excelled. There were so many wonderful things that they actually could do with the constrictions that they were set with. And we are amazed at the quality of things our lecturers came up with. You know, I have a daughter, sorry, I'm taking over the conversation. I have a daughter who is first year at the moment, and she's doing chemistry, and she's doing chemical practicals in our kitchen, and she's watching these chemical practice online and seeing what the lecturer does in her kitchen. And she has a front face, she sits in front of the class every day with every lecture. So just, yeah, there are quite a number of things we can do in the box. Thank you very much, Dolf.
Thank you, Detkan. A few comments to take note of. I think also, colleagues, I think one of the things which through this discussion is quite clear that we must also consider our students, specifically our first year students in this specifically difficult time. Structured environment provide comfort and familiarity with them versus unstructured often contribute to complaints, and we pick that up in our student feedback, where the students provide honest feedback, open, honest feedback about what they appreciate and what they struggle with. And as Detkan indicated, yes, there is the boundaries, but rather use that to its full capacity than try to confuse students with different tools and so forth. I know that for that is also counter argument. Detkan, your hand is still up. You want to make a follow-up comment?
Oh, sorry, no, that's me being stupid. But I just want to answer the question, how do we share our innovative ideas? We've had the Flexible Futures Conference at our university. It was shared in there. So, Dolf, are those links available where people can go to see what was shown?
Yes, I will share the link if I can find them, or if the other colleague can quickly find it and just share the links. But that's one way. Another way is to allow lecturers to participate in online sessions and even online training events and so forth. Colleagues, we have a few minutes left, and we still have not addressed one thing, which I think been mentioned indirectly, and maybe for the last few minutes, we need to focus on the impact of implementing any new technologies at institutional scale. What competencies are we expecting from our academic staff in implementing these? And what competencies are we expecting from our students to use these? And I think the third part of that question is, are the students really prepared for using this, and how do we make sure that they can use this effectively? Thank you, Estelle, for sharing that. So maybe I must elaborate on this. I think on my whole institutional bee in the bonnet is that we are raising the bar with the competencies we're expecting from lectures. And that brings us to the debate about digital fluency and digital literacy. And how do we make sure that our lectures will be digital fluent and not only digital literate? Any comment on that last topic?
This Leona, yeah, just something that it's an example that we're now looking into at the NWU is because we traditionally always had the sit-down exams, and now we need to get online summative assessment. Now they're pushing for proctoring, and I mean, both the problems with data and the what do you call it, the POPI and those things. You also now need, the lecturer needs to go and now look through all those videos to try and catch out students that's not doing what they're supposed to do. So it just adds to their workload as well.
Thanks. I thought no one is going to mention that during this whole session, Liana, but thank you for mentioning that, because that opens a new can of worms. I see, Dennis, you had your hand up also.
Hi, Dolf. Yes, I just wanted to expand on the need for digital fluency. I think that is one of the keys for our lecturers and our students, is because technology develops so quickly. And even within a technology platform, the tools that's available develop so quickly. Things like being able to communicate effectively on any platform, being able to express emotion within a platform, being able to pick up cues where we normally would pick up from face-to-face and body language, etc. And using that fluently without being bogged down with a specific tool, but just knowing that this tool should be able to do this. Let me quickly find out how to do this with this tool. I think that fluency and what it boils down to is confidence is the key for us to go forward to effectively, use all the disruptive technologies that will be coming in future as well.
Thank you, Dennis, for that contribution. Colleagues, we've got 5 minutes left. While I'm summarizing what I've been hearing from the specific session, I think the first important message is, as Johannes indicated, an outdated but still applicable debate about why. And the focus specifically is on the different models of the pedagogical outcomes we want to achieve with implementing technologies. We've heard a few comments about the challenges of scaling technologies at institutional level. We've been caught with different models, free versus commercial. There was a clear comment about the requirement of looking into an educational ecosystem that integrates seamlessly. And I think the last comment, which was important for me taking away from this, is that our lecturers, and we've noted that at all the universities I've been speaking to, became quite fluent in using what we provided, and there's pressure on moving to a next level, and that remains a challenge. Any last comment from anyone? What do you, we somehow need to use technology to look at lecture workload. You hear me laughing about that. I think I can add to that. We need to somehow to use technology to look at lecture wellness also. Shala, I think that is the thing which is important. And from that perspective, colleagues, thank you for the opportunity. If there's no one else who wants to make a last comment on this specific topic we decided upon, because it's going to be an ongoing debate, and it's so contextual. It is so contextual. There's organizational culture playing an influence. There are specific thoughts, processes in different universities playing an influence. But I think if you implement technology to solve, as I mentioned earlier, your educational ecosystem problems, then all the best with that initiative. That's all I can say. Colleagues, 3 minutes left. I want to thank you for all your contributions. Thank you to those who were willing to grab the mic and share their feelings. Thank you to the panel members who were willing to say that they can introduce the topic to us. And yes, all the best to the last few months of the year. I think we will move into a few minutes into the last session of the day, which also will take this topic, or I'm sure we will talk about this topic again, when it focuses about how COVID-19 impacted the work of educational technologists or professionals such as instruction designers or learning designers. Thank you, colleagues, again. A wonderful opportunity to share thoughts and to engage with you. All the best.